Hey guys, Fujoshi Commentary here, and today I wanted to make an official debunking video. Now I'm sure you've seen by my last two videos that I love killing stalking with a passion and really look at the deeper meaning and how well Kugi plays into the horror murder mystery genre. So today I'm going to be debunking a few common misconceptions and misinformed hate surrounding this manhwa and its fanbase. I will be going off of a specific Tumblr blog for the bulk of my arguments, which was recommended to me in the comments on one of my first videos by someone who didn't particularly like killing stalking and used it to sort of justify her reasons why. I used a few of my rebuttals to this blog post, which can be found on my official Tumblr, which I always have linked in the description below. Also, I have to put a spoiler warning up for anyone who hasn't read this manhwa in full of its entirety yet. I kind of have to reveal key plot points in order to debunk the majority of these claims, so there will indeed be spoilers. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the first argument I see a lot is that Killing Stalking and its fans use the manhwa to fetishize same-sex relationships and exploit them, that the only reason that they have been interested in Killing Stalking to begin with, and it has a beloved list of the genre tags. So basically, what I have to say about this is the manhwa is not meant to be a romantic or an erotic comic. The main tag of the first and foremost will always be for its popularity with psychological and horror, and then BL as a second tag. Anyone who reads this manga knows that that simply isn't true to the fact that it's just a BL manhwa. Many people use the 3 sexual acts in the manhwa to justify this. I'd just like to point out that just because there's a sexual encounter going on in a mature work doesn't mean there's any sort of romantic involvement going on, or that there's any sort of fetishizing that's going on. Love does not equal lust, and sexual acts can be used to depict very uncomfortable levels of control and power, and even forms of manipulation and pity in a situation in many works of fiction. For example, the first sexual scene in Killing Stalking was a simple handjob, and a sort of weird uncomfortable makeout session. It wouldn't be fair to classify this as sensual or sexually pleasing, as the way it's structured is meant to be uncomfortable, from the way Boom bites Sang-woo's lips when they kiss, to the obvious desperation in Boom's actions that can be open to interpretation based on his obsession with Sang-woo, to the desperation to remain alive by seducing him because only a few scenes ago he tried to kill Sang-woo with rat poison, which backfired on him horribly. Likewise, in the other scenes, when Sang-woo allows Bum to give him oral, he willingly does this, but in the same interpretation as the last scene, as an obsession of living out his fantasy and blocking out the actual reality of his situation in order to stay alive. Because based on how Bum is so frightened of blood and the knives and the weapons that are around Sang-woo's house, rightfully so, he has a strong desire to live and fears death more than anything, as seen in many of the scenes in Killing Stalking. And the whole "it's unethical to ship Boom and Sang-woo and you're glorifying abuse" statement, it's simply a misinterpretation that is seen at face value with a lot of people who are looking at this fandom. For many of the fans that I've talked to and to gather this argument, it seems that based on what I thought all along, which is that many people sympathize and even empathize with Yoon Boom and his hard life in which he's lived up until now, and they really want him to be noticed by his crush. That's not to say that people approve of the current way that they're interacting, but actually wish that Sang-woo wasn't what he was, forcing Boom to sooner or later face the hard facts that Sang-woo is nothing like his envision. And the fact that this may break one way or another in him internally. Simply put, the fans wish the scenario would have been drastically different because a lot of people reading this are not used to manhwa or any sort of fiction being at this level of maturity and at this popularity level. This is where I see the same concept being applied to many early Harley and Joker fans in a sense. Now, the second argument that has been made is that Kugi is misinterpreting BPD, which is also known as borderline personality disorder, to quote-unquote exploit or use ableism to write out a quote-unquote lazy way of setting the base for Yoon Boom's obsession with Sang-woo. Now, this should literally be a no-brainer and quite easy to debunk, as it's highlighted in bulk and in detail in quite literally the first chapter. Now, based on several definitions from medical to Webster Dictionary, borderline personality disorder is quite literally accurately portrayed in this manhwa as described as being an unstable emotionally, behavior-wise, and relationship-wise in a person. This can be caused by real-life trauma and abuse, which is accurately seen with the emotional, sexual, and physical abuse that Boom has encountered by his uncle, as well as his self-harm. In addition, this is also added to his emotional disconnect with people whom he has confessed to, which shows in how he probably got this disorder early in childhood, from the small things like the teacher scolding him for stealing a girl's pencil, which is a common thing that boys will do when they are at a young age, which can be misconstrued to being a bully when they simply kind of like a girl, to a girl which appeared to be in his middle or high school days telling him to get away because he was a freak, and even forced to have a restraining order against him, which we can openly interpret as could have possibly been a violent behavior episode or even a creepy emotional or behavioral episode from him, which resulted in a restraining order being taken out against him. Siang-woo being his crush while he was in university, as well as him saving Boom in the military from potentially being gang raped and molested, was a result of a blind devotion and sort of crush turned into a deadly obsession with him. So with that, based on what I've just outlined on his backstory, even upon learning Siang-woo was a killer and a kidnapper, he still was in a daze, especially when the sociopathic split personality meant to charm people that Siang-woo possesses gives Boom a reason to validate his continuing obsession with him. So one can say this manhwa has pretty accurately portrayed Boom's mental state. The third one is that many people are saying that this relationship is unhealthy, which is very true, and I strongly agree, but when explaining why, they often bring up that Bum is being raped by Siang-woo, which isn't actually true at all. The sexual acts Bum has done have all been consensual on both parties. He's even attempted his latest sexual scene earlier in the manhwa that they have sex to steer him away from being punished by Siang-woo for crossing the line and trying to leave. Mind you, the clusterfuck of what happens and transpires afterwards, and what eventually ends up Siang-woo getting off on hanging and committing asphyxiation on Yoon Boom as a form of punishment was the closest thing to a non-consensual act on Boom, as you're getting there is no rape scenes in this manhwa, and it's pretty disingenuous to use a rape scene in a movie or any sort of rape on campuses to compare this manhwa when there is simply no sort of rape scenes whatsoever. Also, lately I've been seeing a lot of people comparing this manhwa to the Viewfinder series or even Yuri on Ice, and claiming BL is used as a lazy framing device to bait fans, as you would see in many sports anime to bait Fujoshis and Yaoi fans. And it makes what would have been an anxiety-inducing thriller into what some would call a mediocre Yaoi fanfiction, even going so far as to claim that every merit of this series has been destroyed by the fact that it lulls periods between intense scenes of all use of BL genre to pad its content right down to the semi-ook character designs and some sort of speculation of emasculation, overall sexuality. This point isn't so much debunkable as to the fact that it's actually relevant. Comparing a horror manhwa from Korea to an action manga that actually had several unconsenting drunk and actual failed BDM rape scenes to a manhwa that is about getting out alive from the hands of a killer whom again hasn't raped you at all, which I have to say, I love Yamane Ayano's works and I love her as a mangaka, but I have to say, come on. There's a sorry excuse and a comparison to put that there. I could see a stronger argument if this was compared to something like Lychee Hikari Club or The Boy Next Door. Viewfinder doesn't even compare, and it's not even in the same lane or country as this manhwa. And again, even the scenes themselves in Killing Stalking do not come off as sexy or sweet. It's designed to be uncomfortable and even cringy, because the reality of what Boom's fantasies and crimes of stalking and breaking and entering have gotten him into. Which I also would like to point out on the side, that this entire premise of this manhwa, Killing Stalking, Yunbum is not innocent at all. He's been stalking and broke into the home of Xiangwu. If he hadn't done this, he would have never been in this situation. So I'm not sure where few fans have gotten this #BUM-did-nothing-wrong narrative. Also, I'd like to add that BL is simply an umbrella term used to describe articles and elements of gay male fiction, the same way queer is an umbrella term for the LGBT community. Just because a show or novel has elements of BL doesn't mean it's strictly a yaoi or strictly a bara or shota or whatever you'd like to identify it as. Many can see this as an anime such as Number 6 or novels like Will Grayson, and any form of other media. The same can be applied in GL. There can be elements of BL or GL in a story, and that be one of the tags, as Kugi's works was a secondary tag. And last point is, a lot of people have been passing this work off as quote-unquote homophobic fetish porn and glorifying abuse. And that is just to say you probably don't really know what real homophobic fetish porn is. To say that Killing Stalking is one, I really think you shouldn't say that. If you really want to know what a homophobic fetish pornography looks like, I suggest reading a few manga by the notorious Gengaro Takame. And I guarantee you will think that Killing Stalking is tame and nowhere near that level once you've read them. Most certainly, the whole memeing and appeal to Xiangwu as daddy or some other term that is used in the porn community seems to be more of a joke or meme, as well as a perfect example of how Kugi has written his sociopathic serial killer persona, to charm those who are unsuspecting in everyday society in order to accomplish the act of luring and killing who he wants to kill, which is essentially what most serial killers do, and it's a perfect representation of famous and notorious serial killers such as Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy, and how they baited and trapped their victims with their alluring charms. Because, to be honest, nobody would go with someone who wasn't incredibly charming and remotely sort of, I guess, falsely romantic like an actor. If someone just point blank told you that they were wanting to murder you in their basement once they get home with you, you most certainly wouldn't go with them, which is what makes serial killers so sociopathic, unique, and dissectable. Okay, so now that I have debunked a few major arguments against it, here are my final thoughts on Killing Stalking itself and the hate surrounding the fandom and how I personally take this story. While it's no question how the majority of fans have found out about Killing Stalking through Fujoshi recommendations within the community, seeing as many people who were introduced to this were by the Yuri on Ice community, after the first season ended and fans no longer had anything to openly discuss since all that was done during its on-air circulation was already discussed. I would never compare a sports shonen ai that is Yuri on Ice to a psychological horror, as there's simply nothing to compare these titles in any way, shape, or form, and in no way do they intersect, and they aren't even from the same country. And the myth that Lidson is trying to make this more profitable or more appealing by pushing the BL genre as a narrative is quite easily debunkable by the fact that it simply gained popularity a short time after it was being promoted as the second place comic winner, just plainly as a comic winner over all the titles, whether it be BL, hetero, GL, and its best story. And then with the popularity, there was the fan contest, much like Crunchyroll's Anime Awards contest around the same time, and Killing Stalking won for Best BL, because while it is a psychological horror manhwa, it also does have those elements of BL, and a lot of people liked that, which previously had Blood Bank at the top. That was simply a matter of good timing and when it was at its peak. And if you're anything like me, I didn't discover Killing Stalking through the Fujoshi fan community. I actually discovered this through a very similar manhwa known as Bastard, which has the same exact tropes to a serial killer, psychological, and horror manhwa, just with a hetero relationship, and the killer and victim appear to be in the partner in crime genre are father and son. They have the same exact dynamics, and you see the same sort of plot development, just with a different relationship put in hand. So if anybody would be reading Bastard and then read Killing Stalking, they would see automatically there are so many parallel similarities, and it's not so much about trying to be homophobic or glorify abuse. It's just that this formula in Korea with the manhwa seems to be a very common one, and written in various ways to a greater degree. And finally, I just want to say that if you personally don't like this manhwa, that's perfectly fine and in many ways understandable, as this is a very mature, graphic, and explicit comic that doesn't shy away from breaking boundaries and making controversial topics open to interpretation and suspense. But I do not condone the acts of completely dismissing this work and demonizing the author, as well as generalizing the fans based on ignorance and misconceptions that you have heard through the grapevine or on a low-tier blog post on Tumblr. If you simply don't like it, that's perfectly fine, and nobody should bully or gang up on you or force you to like something that you simply don't like. But the same should apply to the respect of those who do enjoy this overall as well. Let's respect one another and our interests, as I'm sure there are things that we all engage in that many people may not see the hype in, or the excitement, or may even look down upon. I don't want people from the Yuri on Ice fandom or people who simply don't like this to become another Steven Universe fandom 2.0. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've yet to do so already, please like and subscribe to my page for more content. Also, if you would like to pledge to my Patreon, all pledges are accepted, or make a one-time donation to my PayPal to help me manage becoming a full-time YouTuber. It would be greatly appreciated, but if not, your watches and engagement are just as good too. Also, please feel free to share this video with friends or anyone who may have misconceptions or questions about the manhwa, as I know this is an extremely complex topic to talk about, as this manhwa is extremely complex in and of itself. Also, I would love it if you guys offered your own take and opinions on how you feel about Killing Stalking, the fan base, and the hate in the comments down below. I'm open to any sort of discussion. So with that being said, guys, peace, love, and stay groovin', humans!